The Samsung Galaxy S23 series has arrived, and there's a lot of similarities between all three of these options this year. For instance, all three of Samsung's latest devices will boast a sleek design with stunning 120Hz dynamic AMOLED displays. Each phone this year contains the powerful Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor, which delivers lightning-fast performance whether you're gaming or multitasking. Each has a 12-megapixel front-facing camera, and each can shoot 4K 60fps with that same front-facing camera, while all three triple-camera setups can record video up to 8K 30fps. All three devices have Wi-Fi 6E, ensuring smoother, more consistent connectivity provided you have a Wi-Fi 6E enabled router at home or in the office. All three will also have wireless charging, reverse charging, ultrasonic fingerprint sensors, face unlock, and each will have IP68 water and dust resistance respectively. The differences between all three will really come down to battery, RAM, storage, rear triple cameras in terms of photos, and of course pricing. The Galaxy S23 has a 3900 mAh battery, 8GB of RAM, and will come in two storage options, 128 or 256 gigabytes, while the Galaxy S23 Plus has a 4700 mAh battery, 8GB of RAM, and 256 GB or 512 GB storage options. Both the S23 and the S23 Plus, however, have the same impressive triple camera setup, a 50 megapixel wide lens, 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 10 megapixel telephoto lens. In terms of specs and performance, you can expect the S23 and the S23 Plus to be pretty much identical in everyday use. It's really going to come down to the size when picking between either of these two devices. The Samsung Galaxy S23, on the other hand, has a 5000 mAh battery, up to 12 GB of RAM, and a 1TB of storage option. The triple camera setup includes a whopping 200 megapixel wide lens, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 10 megapixel telephoto lens. The obvious difference with the Ultra is the inclusion of the S Pen, something I don't personally use very often as my handwriting and artistic skills are lacking to say the least, but nonetheless it is a nice to have in a pinch, especially when signing documents or using it to activate the camera shutter for group photos or recording video. Now, while the design of the S23 and S23 Plus are very similar of that of the S22 series of last year, I will note, pun intended, I really appreciate the flatter design here on the S23 Ultra this year compared to the rounded curved display of last year's S22 Ultra. Samsung has reduced the curve, and because of this it feels more ergonomic in the hand and there's far less concern for any accidental display touches. I'm not going to share a bunch of camera samples from each of these because, well, honestly, they're not all that different from the S22 series. I will say the cameras across each capture rich, vivid images regardless of which S23 you're using. While the Ultra packs that 200 megapixel lens, you still need to remember that megapixels aren't necessarily everything. Of course, each of these devices will take excellent photos, with the Ultra edging out slightly in my opinion in terms of overall quality, but only slightly. What I'm trying to say is you absolutely won't be disappointed with the cameras on either the S23 or the S23 Plus if you decided to not go with the Ultra. Really, the difference in cameras here will come down to the zoom. If you absolutely must have the insane zoom, then you must absolutely have the Ultra, period. For me personally, I only find myself requiring such zoom in a handful of situations, so it's not really a feature I prioritize when looking for a device. One issue that Samsung devices are constantly plagued with, of course, is shutter lag. It's still very much present across each of these S23 devices and really becomes a deal breaker for me. Taking photos of my kids and pets and constantly ending up with blurry images, or the moment is just gone entirely from that said delay, is rather frustrating. I understand changing settings, adjusting the way you shoot, etc. may assist with improving this, but come on, Samsung. Most, and when I say most, like 90% of people just want to point, shoot, and get a solid instant photo with zero shutter lag. I'll happily take lesser image quality for faster shutter speed any day, because actually capturing those priceless moments is more important than pixel peeping between smartphones at the end of the day. Not sure what is exactly causing this, and it's becoming less optimistic that Samsung will ever address this, as we yet to see it again here. Samsung's familiar One UI interface combined with robust 5G and the noted Wi-Fi 6E connectivity makes each an absolute multitasking powerhouse. I've seen zero stutter or lag across the board using each of these S23 devices. The battery in each will provide ample power to keep up with your busy lifestyle, as each has gotten me through the day no problem with heavy usage. In terms of pricing here in the US, you can get the S23 for $799, S23 Plus for $999, and the S23 Ultra for $1199. Samsung did not have the greatest trade-in values this year, and many carrier deals weren't great either. However, if you're on Google Fi or possibly carrier shopping and specifically want one of these latest S23 devices, I highly recommend buying from Google Fi directly. Terms will apply, of course, so read the fine print when shopping, but Google is currently offering the S23 at just $299, the Plus at $499, and the Ultra at only $599. Let's cut through the BS though and ask the age-old question. Do you need to upgrade? Well, for most, that answer is going to be a hard no. If you especially have a S21 or S22 series device, it's just a simple hard pass altogether. If your S10 series is still in tip-top shape, I'd even tell you to pass on the S23 series. If you have a S9 or below and you're able to get a solid deal on any of these S23 devices this year from your mobile carrier, or maybe you just have expendable funds, then sure, go for it. However, I'm honestly hard-pressed to recommend this series from Samsung when previous gen devices like the S21 Ultra and S22 Ultra can be found for even less money now and offer much of the same experience with software updates for years to come. If I absolutely had to pick between each of these though, similar to last year, I'd probably go with the regular S23 or the S23 Plus from Google Fi, of course, with those steep discounts I mentioned. Don't get me wrong, the Ultra is cool and all, but I don't need the zoom nor the S Pen, so why pay more for such little in return? Now, I'm not here to bash Samsung. Sure, the S23 series is flashy, exciting, and by all accounts technically new. But companies like Apple and Samsung continue to offer minimal refinements, with most noticing very few, if any, differences from their prior device, while ultimately Apple and Samsung are seeing staggering declines in year-over-year sales. Samsung specifically seeing an 8-year downward trend in terms of their mobile division, as far less are upgrading. While many in the tech space continue to argue that we haven't hit peak smartphone, I think the data clearly says otherwise. Many aren't upgrading, with majority of consumers now upgrading roughly every 3 years. With this S23 series, it's no different, and it's difficult for me to recommend to most. All I can say is take a hard look at your current device. Do you need to upgrade? Are these minimal refinements worth spending your money when doom scrolling, playing a few games, watching content like this on YouTube, responding to texts or emails will all ultimately feel the same regardless of glass slab you've chosen to use the last few years? Enough of me rambling though, I'd like to know your thoughts on all of the above. Do you think we've hit peak tech? What are your thoughts on the Galaxy S23 series? Did you get one? Which one did you order? Let's discuss in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, take care, and stay safe.